We often hear that a picture is worth 1,000 words, but sometimes just one small detail in a photo can be enough to shatter an entire relationship. I never thought my life would take a different turn because of a seemingly harmless picture. A photo my boyfriend posted on social media with a joyful face, a bright smile, and a simple caption: "Relaxing weekend." By nature, I'm not the type to check my partner's phone, get jealous for no reason, or play detective in a relationship. We had been together for nearly 2 years, going through all kinds of emotions, from rainy days when we held hands on cold walks to heated arguments that almost led to breakups but always ended with us finding our way back to each other. I trusted him with almost absolute faith. Until that day, the photo he posted was taken at a well-known cafe, with a beautiful background and great lighting. In short, perfect for a social media shot. But when I looked more closely, something made me feel uneasy. At first, it was just a vague feeling. It wasn't clear, just a sense that something wasn't right. I zoomed in on the photo, scanning every little detail: the coffee cup, the reflection on the glass window, and then I froze. Just one tiny detail, incredibly small, that probably 99 out of 100 people wouldn't even notice. But for me, someone who had sat across from him at hundreds of cafés, who knew his habits, preferences, and even the tiniest quirks, I knew for certain it wasn't a coincidence. And from that moment, the doubt in me grew, layer by layer, until the whole picture came into view, painfully and unmistakably clear. I found out my boyfriend was cheating, not from a message, not from rumors, but from the very photo he confidently posted, completely unaware that it would become the evidence that ended our relationship. We often believe that love is built on trust, that if two people truly understand and are honest with each other, nothing can come between them. I used to believe that too, until one day, that trust shattered, all because of a seemingly harmless photo on social media. Not a suspicious message, not some secretive behavior, but a detail so small almost no one would notice. Yet it was that very detail that became the first clue exposing a betrayal I never imagined. He wasn't the type to post often, but whenever he did, it was always carefully curated. That day's photo showed him sitting in a cozy cafe with warm tones, next to a large window, looking out onto the street. His face was bright, his eyes carried that familiar, gentle look. The caption was just a few simple words: "Weekend vibes." A normal photo, nothing suspicious, until I noticed something off. A strange, uneasy feeling crept in. I zoomed in and examined every corner. On the table, there were 2 drinks, not unusual, since he often met up with friends. But what made me pause was the pair of sunglasses next to the other glass. They weren't his, I was certain. I had gone shopping for sunglasses with him before. He always wore black, square frames. But this pair was cat-eye shaped, with thin reddish-brown frames, the kind typically worn by women. I started looking for more clues. In the reflection on the window behind him, there was a faint silhouette, blurry but distinct. From the long hair falling over one shoulder and the soft pink top, I knew it wasn't just a male friend, as he might have claimed. My eyes stung. Something inside me cracked. Every memory, the hand-holding, the loving promises, suddenly felt hollow. I didn't confront him right away. I quietly dug deeper, and little by little, more details emerged, confirming the truth. He was cheating on me. I discovered my boyfriend's infidelity from a single, almost invisible detail in a photo, but one that changed everything. I spent the entire evening looking at that photo, over and over again. Waves of confusion kept rising within me. My mind told me, maybe it's just a coincidence, but my heart knew. Once you notice a sign, something isn't right. I started recalling the past few weeks, how he had suddenly become busy more often, how his phone would die unexpectedly because of urgent work, how sometimes his replies were unusually delayed. I had brushed it off, telling myself that everyone needs personal space. But now I understood that personal space wasn't meant for me. The next morning, I began looking more closely into what he had shared. I traced the location of the cafe in the photo, then searched who frequently checked in there. And then, I found her, a public Instagram account, with a photo taken at the same place at the same time, and more strikingly, she was wearing a pair of sunglasses exactly like the ones I had seen in my boyfriend's photo. Her post was a few days old, and he wasn't in the picture, but the caption sent chills down my spine. He always knows how to make me feel special. My heart sank. I didn't say anything immediately. I needed one final confirmation. A few days later, I met up with him as usual. He was still the same attentive, caring boyfriend, still asking about the smallest details of my day. But now, every word he said felt like a small blade carving into what little trust one had left. I pulled out my phone, showed him the photo, and asked casually, "This photo's really nice. Who took it for you?" He paused for a moment, then smiled. "I asked one of the staff there. I was just having coffee alone." Alone. But there were 2 drinks and a pair of sunglasses that didn't belong to him. I looked at him and said nothing more. In that moment, I realized I no longer needed to argue, no longer needed a confession. The evidence was clear, and the deception had revealed itself. I discovered my boyfriend was cheating thanks to a single, tiny detail in a photo. But that tiny detail saved me from a dishonest love. So I chose to walk away, quietly, but with dignity. Because sometimes, silence is the strongest response to betrayal. I walked out of the cafe that day with a strange sense of emptiness.
No cheers, no blame, no pleiade.
I didn't ask any more questions. I simply stood up, gave him a faint, forced smile, and walked away. Maybe he hadn't realized anything, or maybe he knew that I knew. But both of us stayed silent, as if to preserve what was left of the relationship we once had. That evening, I went back through our old memories. The long messages, the photos we took together, the rainy walks hand in hand, the little gifts he gave me on random days. Everything was still there, vivid, intact, but stripped of meaning. It's strange, realizing you've been betrayed. The most painful part isn't losing that person, but losing the version of yourself you were in that relationship. The one who trusted wholeheartedly, who gave everything, who believed without hesitation. I didn't post a long status, didn't cause a scene on social media. I simply blocked him on every platform, not out of hatred, but for my own protection. I understood something clearly. Someone who chooses to betray you once can very well do it again. Only next time they'll be better at hiding it. A few days later, he texted me, just a short message. "How have you been lately?" I read it and didn't reply, because I knew if someone truly cared about you, they wouldn't let you sit there, staring at a photo, piecing together every painful clue on your own. After that, I began to see relationships differently. I no longer romanticize love, but I haven't lost faith in it either. I understand now that I deserve a kind of love that doesn't involve secrets, doesn't require doubt, and certainly doesn't make me search through the smallest details just to find the truth. That photo, seemingly innocent, ended up being the clearest farewell gift he ever gave me. And I, finally, learned how to let go in the gentlest way. Not because I stopped loving him, but because I had learned to love myself. The days that followed were a mix of relief and uncertainty. I no longer had to wait for messages at night, no longer scrolled through social media wondering where he was, what he was doing, and who he was with. But that very emptiness sometimes made me cry in the middle of the night. People often say that leaving someone who's not good for you isn't the hardest part. The hard part is letting go of the habits that had become deeply ingrained. And I've never felt that more deeply than I did then. Each morning, I learned to take better care of myself. I went back to the things I used to love before I loved him. Having coffee alone, listening to indie music, reading on the balcony. Gradually, I reclaimed my own rhythm of life. One that didn't revolve around someone else's schedule. There were days when I saw couples walking hand in hand down the street, and my heart would ache a little, but I'd smile to myself and think, yes, I had a time like that too. It just wasn't with the right person. People say women become stronger and more radiant after leaving a toxic relationship. I used to doubt that, but now I believe it. I didn't just learn how to overcome the pain. I learned how to look inward, to ask why I had been so blind, why I had tolerated it, and how to never let that happen again. I also received advice from friends and others who had been through similar heartbreak. They told me that discovering the truth, even if it hurts, is still better than living in deception without knowing. And they were right. If it weren't for that photo, I might have kept investing my emotions in someone who didn't deserve them, and the damage would have been even deeper. A few months later, I ran into him, by chance, at a gathering with mutual friends. His eyes met mine with a hint of awkwardness, maybe even regret.
But not me.
I smiled politely, said a casual hello, and turned away. No anger, no resentment. Because the one truly at a loss wasn't me, it was him, for losing someone who had once loved him with such sincerity. I'm sharing this story not to complain, but to remind you, and also to remind myself, that in love, don't ignore your instincts. Don't dismiss the small details, because sometimes the smallest thing can be the door to the biggest truth. You deserve a love that's whole and honest. Don't let anyone make you search for the truth through a photo again.